It's no secret that Wanda is a very powerful character in Don't Starve Together. When she came out, she was called broken and OP, as every character is, and every character rework is called. And nowadays, that's kind of died down. People tend to think of Wanda as a relatively balanced character due primarily to the fact that she is more difficult to play and just has a higher skill floor than the average character. And for a long while, people were pretty satisfied with that back and forth. Except me. Wanda is a character that has little to no downside, and as a character, she has an incredible impact on the players around her. So much so that I would say playing with a Wanda in the server is almost as strong as playing Wanda herself. Now, the reason I think this is the case is one that is relatively simple to understand, but requires a bit of an explanation. So let's start by covering her perks and her downside. Wanda's biggest and, for the most part, only perks all are tied into her clocks. This is easily the biggest part of the character. Starting off, you need Clockmakers Tools, which only require a gold, flint, and twigs in order to make timepieces. Timepieces themselves are used in making all of Wanda's clocks, and they require 8 Thulecite fragments and 2 nightmare fuel, which is relatively easy to get, but I'll get into that later. Ageless Watches are Wanda's only source of healing, and they can be thought of as just reusable jelly beans. Ageless Watches are made with 1 timepiece, 2 marble, and 1 red gem. All things considered, these also aren't terribly difficult to get, but once again, back to that later. The Backstep Watch is a very simple clock to make. All it requires is 1 timepiece and 2 gold. It gives iframes and teleports you a few steps back, and it has a very small cooldown. The appeal to this is that it's easily accessible, and it allows you to dodge attacks that otherwise would be unable to be dodged, but it does require some degree of precision. The Backtrek watch requires 2 timepieces, 2 gold, and 1 walrus tusk. This allows Wanda to set anchor points and teleport to them on an 8-minute cooldown, which is the span of 1 day in-game. This also does allow you to transport between shards, that being going in and out of caves, and it can be equipped with a purple gem to make a Rift watch, which requires a Backtrek watch and a purple gem. This allows Wanda to open time rifts, which are wormholes at the anchor points, and this allows other players as well as Wanda, and something on her back such as statues, to be transported across long distances incredibly easily. The biggest bottleneck to both of these watches are the tusks. The tusks are relatively problematic to find in regards to quantity required to set up a good network. However, this is made incredibly easy with the existence of a triple Mac Tusk or an automated method of killing Mac Tusks, and enough time. Now onto the best 2 watches that Wanda has at her disposal, which are easily the most influential to Wanda players and her team. The Second Chance watch requires 1 timepiece, 2 living logs, and 4 bone shards. It's a resurrection tool that has no penalty aside from a 4-minute cooldown if Wanda uses it to revive other people. If Wanda uses it to revive herself, then it does break, giving you 1 living log and 2 bone shards as well as the timepiece back. This is easily replaceable if it's broken, and for the most part acts and actions have no consequences for you and other players. The Alarming Clock requires 3 timepieces, 4 marble, and 8 nightmare fuel. This is a whip weapon, which means it has more range on it, and because of that range, it allows you to cheese certain enemies as your range is going to be longer than theirs. So for the most part, you could hit them without them being able to hit you. This weapon has a base damage of 81.6 when it's fueled and 27.2 when it's out of fuel. The damage is boosted based on the Wanda's age. So at middle age, she does 97.62 damage, and old Wanda deals 142.8 damage. It doesn't break at 0% durability and just acts as a damage down, and is only slightly less DPS than Mighty Wolfgang with the Dark Sword. Wanda's stats are also above average, sitting at 150 effective health, 175 hunger, and 200 sanity. Now, Wanda's downsides do something to offset this, seeing as how Wanda passively loses health, which is offset by a singular Ageless Watch and then some. And healing food is not effective as Wanda, since she has no health and only ages. The age as a mechanic is something that just ticks down progressively as time goes on. However, if you have an Ageless Watch, then this is very easy to just ignore, because you can just, for the most part, use the watch on cooldown and gain more health as time goes on. Wanda's downsides is having a harder time of healing and has some seemingly out of the way and difficult materials to make her stuff. But that is only an appearance. Wanda herself has an easy time getting a lot of these resources if you just know where to look. Time fragments require thulecite fragments, which are probably the biggest, most apparent issue that people are going to run into. The ruins for a while has been the only way to access thulecite. However, since a couple updates ago, they did introduce the Lunar Grotto, which connects to the archives. The archives are incredibly beneficial to Wanda, since they are next to the Lunar Grotto and vice versa, and they have thulecite fragments that you could hammer down via the walls that spawn in the archives themselves. Living logs are also present in the Lunar Grotto, and the bone shards found in the blue mushroom biome can be used for the second chance watch, which is significantly easier than people make it out to be in regards to getting it. The Lunar Grotto just requires you to go kill mush gnomes, which can take a bit of time, but if you're patient about it, is an incredibly easy enemy to deal with. Not to mention, it could also aggro onto the other indigenous fauna in that biome. Bones are located in the blue mushroom biome for you to hammer down on your way to get more thulecite fragments, which means that is both of the major ingredients required for making a second chance watch. The Ageless Watch is somewhat harder to get, but it definitely isn't a huge downside in regards to getting it. The red gem is the real bottleneck of crafting this, since red gems can only be found somewhat later in the game, or at least that's what you would expect. Red gems can be gotten from red hounds as soon as day, I believe it was 18, day 16 from houndmounds, and houndmounds are guaranteed to spawn near dragonfly. So if you really wanted to, you can sit there grinding out red hounds that spawn from these houndmounds. Killing dragonfly is also an option, since this guarantees certain gems, such as the red gem that you need in order to craft this. However, this isn't the best method since you have to kill a boss for it, though if you already have an alarming clock, and if you already have something like a Backstep Watch, then the fight is a lot more feasible for you as opposed to other characters. Now, mining stalagmites in the caves is probably one of the best ways to get red gems early on for her Ageless Watches, since Wanda is going to be down in the caves anyways. If you're unaware, the caves are a great source of gems, since every stalagmite or stalactite that you mine is going to have a chance of dropping a gem, either a red or a blue, on top of the fact that they just fall from the ceiling, which is really strong. The other, and probably the more apparent option, is digging up graves. Now, this does tick away your sanity. However, if you're Wanda, you're probably going to want to go insane for nightmare fuel anyways, since she uses it to power her clock, and her clock is an insanely useful weapon. And speaking of, the alarming clock isn't terribly difficult to get, all things considered. The biggest issue is getting the shadow manipulator required to prototype it. Now, purple gems are a big bottleneck for the shadow manipulator, which can be gotten from combining blue and red gems, so you can dig graves and mine stalagmites for both of those. So if you're doing it already, then you might as well commit to getting another set. Now, you could also ignore all of this if Wickerbottom exists on your server, since you could just prototype a alarming clock if she reads the everything encyclopedia near you. Now, otherwise, you could grind out most all of the other materials required for all of her clocks, such as marble, gold, flint, twigs, etc., just by combing over the overworld. So what does this all mean for Wanda as a character? Like, obviously, these things are pretty good options, but how do they impact her normal gameplay? To put it into perspective, Wanda's ageless clocks functioning as effectively reusable jelly beans means that she has a better passive playstyle than most characters, on top of the fact that you could cancel damage by just popping an Ageless Watch, and you would carry multiple at once. Not like you're going to be holding as many Dark Swords as any other character, because you're going to be relying on one weapon all the time anyway, so you might as well fill up those inventory slots when you're fighting with something that actually helps you during the fight. Extra range also means that enemies are going to have a harder time reaching you, which means you're, on average, going to probably take less damage as Wanda. Her increased damage also means that enemies die sooner, so they have less of a chance of hitting you. Meaning, both of those things combined make Wanda an incredibly good character for just not taking damage. On top of all of that, if you are in a pickle and you are comfortable with timing it, the Backstep Watch is also just a reliable iframe option that no other character has, other than maybe Wartox, and even then, Wartox is limited in regards to how many times he can use it. All of these factors combined make her age downside of passively ticking down not really a big issue whenever you take in the entire character and the game that she's in into account. Not to mention that this is also offset by one of her other perks, which is Knight Armor doesn't drain sanity when you're old. Therefore, even if you do get hit once or twice, it's going to matter 95% less than the average character. Or you could ignore that, get Marble Armor, and then just use a Backstep Watch in place of kiting. Though, this is a lot more difficult than just getting Knight Armor. Not to mention everything else she has at her disposal, such as a Backtrek watch ideally, which can be easily used in tandem with things like anemones to automate the ruins, go in, weave them up, leave, and repeat. Wanda's Second Chance watch is easily one of the most powerful things she has at her disposal, just because it effectively means that your and other players' actions have no consequences. You can pretty realistically just go out, do whatever risky thing you want, and not suffer any penalty from it, because Wanda can just revive you at any time. The fact that you're able to take as many risks with the safety net of Wanda just being present in the server helps significantly. Overall, I think it is very, very fair to say that Wanda is a very strong character, easily, possibly overpowered. So the question is, should Wanda be nerfed, and if so, how? Now, this might be a shock since I just spent quite a bit rambling about how strong Wanda is. I don't think so. I think it's fine for a character to be incredibly strong in a game like this, and I think that Wanda, as she currently stands, is a fine addition to the game because she can be used by experienced players who know what they're doing to carry new players who are trying to get into the game. And overall, I think just including more people in this community and including more people in what I would say is probably one of the best survival games like ever is overall a pretty good thing. Pretty good deal. I think in a game like this, the biggest factor of when a character becomes too OP is when it becomes a matter of why wouldn't you have this as opposed to anything else that falls into the same category. Like for Wanda, there is an argument to be made in regards to why wouldn't you play Wolfgang for combat, because Wolfgang is inherently more tanky, meaning that you could abuse things like Thornton's damage from a Bramble Husk more. And, you know, if you're asking the question, why wouldn't you be Wanda purely for transportation? There's also something to be made there with Walter being able to carry things more precisely and with a bit more leniency between everything, and Wartox being able to teleport on command to essentially anywhere without the need of having to anchor the point down with a certain item to begin with. So all in all, Wanda is a balanced enough character to where she doesn't dictate how people play the game. So you might be asking yourself, what's the point of this video? You know, you just spent tons of time. The video title is like, is Wanda too OP? And all of a sudden you're saying, okay, well, it's fine that this character is incredibly strong. And the reason I make this video is, one, because it's fun. Two, character balance has become quite a big factor that people have been talking about in recent times, as of late. And I see a big trend of people bringing up Wanda. Now, here's what I think in regards to bringing up Wanda in character balancing issues, or just game balancing issues. I don't think people should be saying this is too OP as a first instinct, because Wanda exists, and a lot of what she has is OP, but people are, for the most part, fine with it. In addition to that, people should stop saying this isn't as strong as Wanda whenever they're talking about balancing, because for the most part, she's in a league all of her own, just with all of her tools. So ultimately, bringing up Wanda in discussion videos and in comparison videos as the basis for why a character should be nerfed or why a character should be buffed, I would say just detracts from the entire argument. It just detracts from the entire discussion. I wouldn't recommend doing it, and I think it's definitely beneficial for people to point things out like, okay, well, you know, Wanda might have something, however, we shouldn't use that as the dictating point to nerf or buff certain characters. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about. By the way, a lot of people who watch this stuff aren't subscribed. You're probably tired of hearing that, but like, seriously, I do appreciate it a whole lot. You guys are wonderful. Until next time, bye-bye.